All right, if you're abreast with the agenda, the Fireside Chat will be all about gearing up with cloud to thrive, to succeed in the new world order of the hybrid work, ladies and gentlemen. And once again, we'll have global thought leaders joining us, virtually flying the skies and being with us this lovely evening. Of course, we've done a good work since the morning, and I'm sure there's been so much to take away and participate in, right? So, right now, please allow me with some happy vibes to warmly welcome on the stage Harry Moseley, the global CIO from Zoom Video Communications. With that, let's also rope in Derek O'Halloran, the executive committee member, head of digital economy, the World Economic Forum. Wow. And the chat would be moderated by our diligent moderator, Arnab Basu, partner and leader advisory, PwC India. Arnab, if you're all set, giving it over to you and taking it ahead from here.
Welcome. Hello, everyone. It's my privilege to be having a fireside chat today with Harry Moseley and Derek O'Halloran. We are talking about today how life has changed and how we are gearing up with cloud to thrive in the new world of hybrid work. So as we think of all that's been happening in our lives over the last 22 months, we've done a bit of survey to understand how people are looking at it. PwC went and did a global survey around the hopes and fears 2021, which we called. And one of the interesting findings was that probably 72% of the respondents wanted a mix of remote and in-person. So it wasn't that, everybody wanted to be remote. Many of them felt that, just one of those would not really work. And while 9% stated that they would like to go back to their traditional work environment full time, most people, specifically professionals, office workers, business owners, and the self-employed, all of them were able to perform their jobs very well using technology. But there's been, some challenges for sure, right? We've had manual workers, semi-skilled workers, where many parts of their jobs are difficult to be done as well. So in this new hybrid work culture, which will be part of the new normal now, I wanted to, sort of step back a little and, have conversations with both Harry and Derek on this. But the other thing which, also is very interesting, and this is something which we've seen in the world, is that along with this entire focus on remote working or hybrid working, there's been a huge increase in cloud spending, right? And if you look at some of the figures which Gartner has been sharing with us, the overall cloud spending or public cloud services, that number is growing at a phenomenal pace. And if you look at how CIOs have overcome reluctance of moving mission critical workloads from on-prem to cloud, I think the last year has been a big booster dose on that. And many of the emerging technologies such as containerization or virtualization or edge computing, which are becoming far more mainstream now and driving additional cloud spending. So simply put, I would say, the CIOs have seen a huge amount of push towards moving to the cloud. And, while there has been other headwinds, but I don't think that that's been stopping the overall cloud adoption, the cloud transformation pieces which have been coming up. So as we will listen a bit more from the experts, I wanted to probably start off with Harry, that how has life changed over the last 22 months? What's it been for you at a personal level?
Yeah, it's well. First off, Arnab and Derek, great to be here with both of you, and so wonderful opportunity. Just I will answer your question in a moment, Arnab, but just to sort of pick up on your comment about the acceleration into the cloud, it's like I think everything accelerated over the last, call it almost 2 years now. Not just cloud adoption, cloud migration, but sort of when we've talked for years about digital transformation, never really understood what that meant, because I think of digital, and and then I think, well, if we're going to do digital transformation, that means that we must be coming from an analog world, and I don't think too much is analog these days. It's what I've seen over the last couple of years is like this digital disruption. Whether you look at how governments operate, you look at how enterprises operate, you look at healthcare, you look at education. Sort of any retail. I mean, like it's quite phenomenal, the dramatic acceleration in every industry in terms of what they're doing from a digital disruption perspective. And I think sort of COVID really was the catalyst to that. But it was an acceleration because this was the quote trajectory we were already on. On a personal level, it's been an interesting 22 months for sure. I remember Sunday, March 1st, 2020, a big stop sign was put up, and and I was grounded. Now I know what my kids felt like when I told them they were grounded, but I was really grounded. I used to be on flights 3 or 4 times a week, rocketing around the world, and suddenly, the furthest I went was a walk around my neighborhood. And not too much from a business perspective, not too much has changed since then. I've done some flights on a personal level. I think the biggest thing that I've experienced over the last 22 months is the recognition of how much my life I had actually missed as a consequence of work, because I used to be in the office, and I'm sure you guys were similar, like at 7 a.m. in the morning, getting home at 9 o'clock at night. I was essentially a weekend parent, and that's time that I will never get back. So that was kind of like a big moment. And when I think about sort of people today and the environment that we're now functioning in, you don't need to be a weekend parent anymore. I was talking to one of my colleagues recently. She and her husband are new parents. I think, well, I guess now it's probably 8 weeks. They have an 8-week-old baby, and they're both working at home, and they have, it's a, what an awesome experience that's going to be, is to be there and raising your child. So I think that's just wonderful, quite honestly. And yes, they will have nannies and they will take baby breaks and what have you, but it's a wonderful experience to be able to sort of raise your child and be there when your children go off to school in the morning, be there when your children get home from school, now that kids are actually back in school, be there and take care of an aged parent, or, like me, have your pandemic puppy with you all the time. So it's been really wonderful.
Great. And, given that, as you said, that the way we've lived in this virtual world and worked in this virtual world for the last 22 months, while at least on the, family side, we've actually lived with them a bit more. How do you see this? Has it been more inclusive and collaborative? How do you see this working out?
Absolutely. There's no shadow of a doubt in my mind. It's like, I feel like, Derek, we've never actually met in person, but I feel like I've got a real connection with Derek. I think that we've learned over the last 22 months how to establish professional relationships in a virtual environment. It's dramatically more inclusive. It's dramatically more equal. I mean, like, look at us three, right? Our heads are the same size. There's no hierarchy. It works for the introverts. It works for the extroverts. I fundamentally believe, Arnab, that, sort of, when you look at the pre-pandemic world, we led by in-person meetings and occasionally would augment that with video. But the world has now sort of pivoted, 180 degrees, because we've all, sort of, certainly us in the knowledge space, in the knowledge working space, understand how we can function extraordinarily well in a virtual environment. And so I fundamentally believe, as we go forward now in the business world, we will lead with video first, and we will occasionally augment that with in-person meetings. As an example, I've been talking to a bunch of people in Ireland over the last few weeks, and going to be in Ireland in a couple of months, planning to, assuming that COVID doesn't, sort of throw a monkey wrench into those ideas. But getting together with a bunch of people for a beer on a Friday afternoon, because I met them all, and so I said, hey, why don't we just get together as a group on a Friday afternoon and have a beer together? So it's so I think that's pretty cool. I plan to do the same with a group of people in Israel, and Derek, I'm planning to attend the WEF in January, assuming that COVID doesn't throw a monkey wrench again into that effort. And it'll be great to sort of connect with people like that. So
very interesting, very interesting indeed. Derek, maybe I'll come to you and ask you, obviously tell us a bit about how your life has been and what has changed in the last 22 months for sure. But also I would say that I think what we've seen is that, if you look at the usage and the adoption of cloud, which was there pre-pandemic with, what we've seen in the last 22 months, I think a lot of it has been moving from very pedestrian use cases around infrastructure migration or application migration to really look at how do we combine cloud with emerging technologies like artificial intelligence or the Internet of Things, just so that we can work more intelligently in the connected world, I would say. So if you can just give me your perspectives of how life has changed and how you've seen this how cloud has really become a glue between other technologies and what we've been trying to do.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think for me personally, many of the similar kind of patterns as Harry mentioned. I was also traveling an awful lot for work, and now being able to have lunch with my son when he comes home from his French school every day, and it's priceless, right? I mean, there's nothing that can replace that. As we start to think about going back into the office, the biggest question that I have when I think about going into the office is, when am I going to burn 30 minutes of my time 2 times in a day? Because it's like I'm going to be sitting there doing nothing. And so I think individuals, it's completely changed. I would also like to pick up on a point around some of that sort of more equitable environment, because one of the other things I think that changes within the workplace, I would have teams in different locations around the world, but there's one location where most people are, and in the past, if you tried to have an all-person call, it was very difficult for people outside of that kind of central hub to really truly feel engaged, feel equitable. And also, Harry's point about extroverts and introverts. And I think what these kinds of interactions do is it levels the playing field, and all of a sudden everybody's got an equal. And so we made a very conscious decision when we were coming back to the office, that we'll continue to do our team interactions like this, because it's more healthy, and it's more functional, and it's more productive, and we get the different pieces there. I think in terms of the cloud, you're 100% right. I mean, tremendous growth in the adoption of cloud, and I think there's a few drivers of that. Clearly, I think some of the more advanced use cases, like all of the virtual interactions we've been driving, but other elements as well. I think an awful lot of the kind of intelligent edge use cases start to pick up, whether it's on Internet of Things applications or mobility applications. Of course, that's being enabled through increasing commercialization, like real world applications in 5G. And all of these coming together into driving across multiple industries a whole wave of use cases around intelligent edge. The other driver, however, and this again comes back to a little bit of the inclusion, is just the huge jump that we've seen in internet usage and adoption over the last 20 months. In fact, just this week, the official data that tracks this came out and shows that pre-pandemic, 53% of the people in the world use the internet, despite the fact, by the way, that 87% lived within range of digital infrastructure provided. So it wasn't an infrastructure problem. It was a relevant and affordable service that was the issue. That has jumped now 63%. And that's the biggest 2-year jump that we've seen in over a decade. And now that brings those kinds of opportunities to huge numbers of people around the world that didn't have that, to be able to, build their small, medium-sized enterprise, to be able to make livelihoods for themselves, their families, and to be able to connect with their families. And a lot of that is being driven by, 4G, 5G applications that means that they can participate in some of these benefits as well. So I think just that incredible accelerated transformation is happening both with the what was previously advanced enterprises or software advanced enterprises, also across much broader space, and both of those really fueling that growth in cloud, and all of it, I think, making it not only better for the environment but also better for people.
Right. No, absolutely. And Derek, one of the questions I always have in my mind is that, while all that is good, but, there is a value to physical meetings, how you build relationships, how you look at body language, how you look at eye contact, how you, sort of understand the non-verbal cues. Now, we are also seeing that, how do you handle things like team building? How do you handle things like, how do you drive culture in an environment where people have not really met each other at all? And how do you drive engagement? Because we're also witnessing the Great Resignation, and a large part of that is, probably because of the lack of engagement. As people are working together, they're not engaged. How do you drive culture? I think these are some questions which people are asking. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 100%. I think, meeting people in person always gives some information that you don't get elsewhere. When I was able to go back and meet my whole team, I remembered how many of them are much taller than I am. Because we'd all been the same height for a year and a half. But I think culture is just how you do things. Culture is how you do. And I think some of that kind of Great Resignation, clearly a lot of that has been driven by lifestyle choices. That exactly we've been talking about. And the other huge, I think, driver there is purpose. People want to work now for organizations that have some sort of purpose. And if you if you're clear about your purpose, and you don't try and replicate, I don't think it in this kind of environment, there's no point in trying to replicate what you used to do for culture, right? You have to start with where people are at and where you're at, and a lot of that is about dealing with, it's not companies and employees, it's what are we actually trying to achieve together, and
True.
And then getting people to buy into that, then people will build their own culture. You can't impose culture on people. Culture comes from, a bunch of folk that get together, and then that becomes a unique culture.
No, Derek, I absolutely agree with you. It's like, if you got it, it's all about purpose. Like, what's the purpose of your, what's the purpose of the company? What's behind the company? But also, touching on that Great Resignation topic, Arnab, it's like, we've seen here in the US, 4 million people resigned in August, 4.4 million people resigned in September. And, purpose is a big part of it, culture is a big part of it, but the biggest part of it is the notion of, the employee experience and their work-life balance. This is now sort of employee satisfaction has now escalated to be the single most important thing about attracting, hiring, and retaining talent. In the past, it's always been about client satisfaction. Client satisfaction is number one. It's now also about employee satisfaction. These are two things that are very clearly peers to each other. And, we need to remember that, quote, work is something we do. Work is not a place. The office is a place where we can work. But, it's like Derek was saying, it's like, he'd rather not have to lose, sort of 2 half-hour segments of his day in terms of going to the office. It's kind of like, yes, but going to the office is necessary, not 5 days a week. Not 5 days a week.
Absolutely. And Harry, you've been a veteran in this field for many years. How do you really see, emerging tech trends like AI, really picking up in the post-pandemic world, and what are some of the things which you are noticing?
Yeah, I'm super excited about sort of the variety of technologies. AI, augmented reality, virtual reality, machine learning. We're doing a whole bunch of things, leveraging these technologies, and I believe that the world, sort of is doing a whole bunch of things leveraging these technologies, but we're barely scratching the surface in using them. As an example, in the hybrid world, we're going to start, we've rolled out our smart gallery, which uses artificial intelligence built into the camera so that you can identify people in a room and stream them out as individual tiles to the remote participants, so that there's a feeling of equality, there's a feeling of inclusivity, so that the person at the remote end doesn't feel disenfranchised from the people who are in the room. We're leveraging machine learning for language translation and language transcription, so that Derek could speak German and I could speak English. I would hear his German, but I would hear his English being translated, read it in English. He'd hear my English, but also hear my translation in German and see German. And then, we're rolling out our persistent whiteboarding technology, which is an infinite canvas on all devices, but we're leveraging virtual reality using Oculus from Meta, so that you can have like a real immersive experience when you're collaborating with people around the world from a technology perspective. So, but it's like, the ability to be able to smell, the ability to be able to touch, the ability to be able to sort of like do a physical handshake by putting on, possibly like a digital glove. These are things that are in our future, and they're not that unrealistic anymore. It's like, I think it was late March 2020 when I was cleaning out my office at home, because unlike you guys, I'm a bit of a hoarder. I like to keep everything. So when I realized I was going to be working from home for the foreseeable future, I decided I couldn't work in this cluttered office at home. So I decluttered, and I came across a cartoon which had a bunch of tech guys standing in front of a mainframe, and one of the people was saying, it's like she's doing it. She's pulling the files from the mainframe onto her digital watch. If I said that to you today, you would say, well, what's wrong with that, right? Mainframe might be a bit of an odd phrase, but what was interesting about this cartoon, it was sent to me by a friend and former colleague of mine from UBS, and these were the days when they, sort of the system would open the paper and like stamp it with a rubber stamp with the date on it. It was dated November the 7th, 1990. So this was a cartoon. It was a joke 31 years ago. Now it's a reality. Can you imagine where we'll be a year or two from now?
Absolutely. And, as you said, the world looks very interesting, very different, but very interesting with some of these things around AI and augmented reality for sure. Derek, one last question from my side to you. What do you see as the key trends emerging over the next 1 year?
I think it'll be the integration of the accelerated digitization and ESG agendas. I think that's. I think companies are being forced to really think about what are they bringing, like what is it they're bringing to market and to the world at the same time. The successful companies, even in 2025, are going to be tech-enabled, digital first, and have a very clear articulation about the purpose and the value that they bring all of their stakeholders, including their employees, to Harvey's point. And I think that's top of the agenda for pretty much all the companies, and they have to move fast. So I think we'll start to see that really take shape in the next 12 months.
Thank you, Derek. So thanks both of you for a lovely discourse. And I think most of our viewers would have got quite a few ideas of how the world is changing and where we are looking at. And I would be very interested to, see some of these come to life, not just the technology side, but also the ESG side, as you mentioned, Derek, coming, a month after COP26. I think it's really important for us to, give adequate amount of importance to that as well as we think of the new world and the new questions. So thanks a lot to both of you, and it would be lovely to meet up in person also sometime when our travels again restart. Thanks a lot.
Look forward to
Thank
that.
you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Arnab.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye, Derek. Happy holidays and stay well.
Yeah, likewise, all of you too. Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Well, Harry, Derek, and Arnab, thank you very much for, I must say, those thriving dialogues amongst the three of you. Looks like adapting to the hybrid work will be a good stride. Right. And on that note, having thanked our conversationalist on board, allow me to say well done to the Twitteratis. I'm very happy with how you're posing at the photo booth. This looks very, very exciting. Ajit Rajput says wonderful session at hashtag ET Cloud Summit. And Naresh Kumar also uploads like a very candid picture with, of course, the settings of our photo booth saying lots of learning at the ET Cloud Summit. Great. So great to know that's the vibe of learning in the house. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would urge you to visit and keep a tab of everything that you haven't, to just give the last final touches to ramp up your leaderboard scores. Right now, please don't forget to visit the Experience Zone and the booth of Software One out there. You can also check out and have a greater look in terms of our speaker profiles at the speaker lounge and all that you can access on the platform. Right now, it will be the time for the closing keynote address, ladies and gentlemen, by a senior industry leader. So we'll be right back on the screen. Please stay tuned.